Welcome to the first pillar of my 7-pillar swing. I couldn't possibly begin a discussion about the golf swing without first starting with the grip. How our hands are placed onto the golf club determines everything else that happens in your game. I had the good fortune many years ago to work with the true legend in instruction in Harvey Penick. Harvey, in my mind, studied the grip and its effects on the golf swing more than anyone that's ever played the game. I think when you look at what I'm going to show you in these next few minutes and how important your hands are to the rest of the golf swing, I think it's really going to help you clarify a part of the game that I think we as instructors sometimes overlook, and you as players certainly just get your hands on there somewhat comfortably and think, well, my grip's okay. It's not okay. It's so important to understand that every tiny movement in the hands impacts this club face, which determines where the ball goes, and ultimately how the club path is actually reacting to that face angle. The first thing I would like to do is tell you there are a lot of different grips that we can use. I'm perfectly content if you've played a lot of baseball growing up, or if you have smaller hands, or for you seniors. It's certainly okay if you've gotten a little older and maybe don't feel like you've got quite as good a grip or have some arthritic tendencies to use what we call the 10-finger grip. I certainly want the grip to be as comfortable as you can be, and we're going to begin by talking about how the forearms work onto the club. Once we go through this, no matter whether you use the 10-finger, the interlocking, the overlapping, the forearm placement that I'm going to show you and how we're going to get our hands settled onto that club, it won't matter which one of the 3 grips that you use, you'll be comfortable with that grip, and you'll know that your hands are on there correctly. Probably one of the least used grips is the interlocking grip. The interlocking simply takes the index finger of the left hand and the little finger of the right, and those players that use that usually have smaller hands. As you look at your with smaller hands, you look at your grip with the interlocking grip. I said it's one of the least used, but I want to point out a few players that do use that grip. Jack Nicklaus used the interlocking grip. Tiger Woods, the interlocking grip. Tom Kite, one of Harvey Penick's favorite pupils, the interlocking grip. So when you've got 3 names like those 3 that are the great names in the game of golf, certainly we don't want to discredit that. The most popular grip is the overlapping or Varden grip. And I know most of you that have played the game for a while look at this and you go, well, you know, I want to skip on past this, but I want to show you the importance of that, and I just want to mention all 3 of those grips so that you're comfortable. You don't have to switch to one particular one or the other. What is important is for you to be comfortable with your grip, and most importantly, you understand where your hands go. As we set up here with the club, and you'll see here, this club has a logo here down the center line of the grip. Most grips have some type of a marking or indicator of where the center point is on that grip. So when I set up here to hit that, to hit a shot, I want to place my left hand in a naturally hanging state there where my left forearm is just hanging from my side, and I can allow my shoulder and elbow to relax, and that lets my hand move onto the club from what I call the top of the grip. Most players have been taught over the years to get the club in their fingers. And when I see players look to see if they're in their fingers, they make, in my opinion, the biggest mistake, the number one fault that I see in gripping a club is players look to see that the club's in their fingers, and notice what happens here with my my left arm, I apologize there. Left arm, my left palm is facing up, and when I put my hand on, I twist, and if you watch my forearm right here, my left forearm, if I relax, you'll see how my hand and my forearm actually snaps or moves back. I want to encourage you to try something a little different. I want to encourage you to just allow your arm to hang naturally so that your left thumb moves just to the right side of the center line of the grip. If you could look at this as a clock, if I were standing here holding this club in a clock position, and this where the vertical point here was 12 noon, the bottom was 6 o'clock, I would like to see the left thumb at just about 2 o'clock on the grip. And notice how narrow that you can see right here with the thumb and index finger. They form somewhat of a check mark there as we see that. So you can see my thumb and index finger form a check, and they'll just move to about 2 o'clock in that position. Once I'm able at that point to just let the arm hang naturally and allow that left hand to drop onto the club from the top down, I really free up the tension in my forearm up into my upper arm, shoulder, and chest. So left forearm placement is critical, left thumb placement is critical. You allow the club to go just across the base of the hand, but I never want you to look and see this. Remember, we want to get comfortable that you can just place that hand on there in a comfortable position time and time again. Now, let's talk a little bit about the right hand and what happens as we place the right hand on the grip. When I move to set my right hand onto the club, I love for you to shake hands with the grip. And by that, I simply mean if we were to meet a friend or even someone that we'd never met before, the first thing you do, you walk up, your right elbow's at your side, and you simply reach out to shake hands. Your right forearm is just moving onto the grip into a nice, comfortable handshake position. I personally use the overlapping grip. I've got a real short little finger, so I lay the little finger directly on top of. I'll never forget the discussion I had with Harvey Penick when I asked him to look at my grip when I first started working with him years ago. I had always in previous years had what I called an overlapping grip, but most people don't realize there are actually two ways to overlap the grip. One is for the little finger to lay in between the index and second finger of the left hand. The other, as you can see here, the first way is here with the little finger in between. The other way, and the way that Harvey suggested, because he felt like that was getting my right hand when I approached the grip a little too far under and creating tension that we'll talk about in just a minute, he suggested instead that I just lay my little finger on top of the index finger of my left hand. Harvey also mentioned that that was the original Varden grip, that this was kind of the modern adaptation of that, where that left little finger laid in between. But he felt as though that would be a good position for me, and I really think it's helped me take a lot of the tension out of my grip here. So again, just to recap, left thumb just to the right of center, right hand's going to shake hands. Now, you don't have to do what I'm doing. If you're comfortable with an interlocking, if you're comfortable with a 10-finger grip, or you're comfortable just overlapping either of the two ways I mentioned, the important key here is for you to just shake hands with that grip. And again, we never want to see the palms facing up. Remember, as I said earlier, I place the left hand on from the top. Now the right hand just simply slides on and shakes hands. You'll notice that my left thumb is covered, as we see here, by the lifeline cavity of my right hand. So when I place that on, I often think back to one of the funny stories. Harvey Penick was a master storyteller, as everyone that knows his history was well aware of. He always talked about things in parables, and one of the things that he said was, when he placed, that's why God gave you this indentation in your hand, because that's where your left thumb went when you placed your hands on the golf club. That was the cavity that forms with that lifeline of your right hand, is just to cover that left thumb. So when we see what's happening there, you'll get very, very comfortable very quickly with just sliding that hand into position. Again, I never want to see the left hand come from under, the right hand come from under. This creates a lot of tension in the forearms, and you can even see as I turn here, I'm twisting versus simply placing. And the word that Harvey used, and I always try to use in my instruction, is we place our hands on the club. Gripping implies tension, and we don't want tension. The next thing I'd like to move into is we'll talk a little bit as we go here about some of the impact of how this club moves when the hands are in an improper position.